In the middle of the ancient earth, there was a crack, an opening, a drop-in. Black rock, obsidian shined all around it. And perhaps it might have been a different color, but with the absence of light, everything seemed dark. The velvety kind, the one that was enveloping, all-consuming and all-existing. And there at the bottom of that crack and an opening in the ancient earth lived earth serpents. They rested there. It was their home. They knew where to go and how to travel in the dark earth, how to move and coil around its corners and angles and shapes. They knew how to sleep in the places that were wet, and how to go straight in places that were dry. The serpents had the intelligence of earth themselves, for they were at one with it. And how many of them were there? Perhaps that will stay unknown to us forever. For how can we see in the dark that moves as dark itself? But they were happy, and so was earth. In many ways, that was even before the understanding of happiness, for the two simply existed as one, and serpents were merely a form of earth that traveled through the other forms of earth. But one day, one of the serpents stopped as it was crawling among the rocks and sharp edges, feeling its shining, beautiful, scaly skin move so gracefully. It suddenly stopped. It didn't know why, as if something made it to stop and look around. And as it started doing it, suddenly the serpent realized that everything around it was rock. It was rock and it was other serpents. And everywhere it went in the ancient earth, everything was rock and serpents. Said the serpent. I also seem to move forward and back. I go to the right and to the left, and I go down. But I have never been up. It never occurred to me that there is such need as going up, or that up indeed even existed. The serpent thought that was a silly thought. There's so many other things to do. I must go and move through the crevasses of earth, merge with the waters, go into the darkest caves, coil around the crystals, and play with my brothers and sisters, the other serpents. So I tried to leave that thought behind. But the more it traveled and the more caves it visited, the more crystals touched its back, and the more serpent friends came to play with it, the more the serpent get distressed. For all he could think of was that it has never been up. What would it be like there? Is the surface the same? The serpent thought. How high would I need to go? What would I need to do? Can I live there on my own? Will my brothers and sisters be there? Do I have permission? And the more the serpent thought about going up, the more questions appeared. And it made it very sad. It wanted answers and clarity, or in fact it just didn't even want to ask the questions. It wanted to be happy, to be the serpent that it was, and yet something was driving it up. Something unexplainable, uncomfortable, something that was coiling and scratching and screeching and moving and pushing it up. And one day that strength became stronger than the serpent itself. And as it came to the rock at which it once stood when the first thought appeared, it decided that it had to find the way up. It no longer could stay here without knowing what's there. It wasn't even the choice of the serpent anymore. It was driven. And so instead going to play with the familiar rivers of the underworld and play hide and seek in darkest caves and coil around the crystals, it moved to the right, and then more to the right, and then to the left, and so it went and went and went until it hit an ending. It no longer could go any further. Suddenly, the serpent knew that this is the edge, and the only way out of here is up. And so it started going up. And to its surprise, the journey up was pleasant. It was not dissimilar to what it was used to. The rock was slippery and sometimes mossy, feeling slightly dry against its skin. It was tickling its belly, as if welcoming and inviting it to move further. The serpent rolled a couple of times as it was coming up and laughed with the rock. The rock was welcoming its journey up and was helping it. And so many moons have passed, and we will never know, for in the ancient earth there was only dark. But the serpent was driven up, and that became a joyful journey, with ease and laughter. The serpent often thought about its friends and family that it left behind, but no longer in a sad way, but in the way of something that it had when it was something else, when it lived in the crack of an ancient earth. And now the serpent thought, now I am to live at the top of an ancient earth. And one day the rock hummed in the morning to the serpent, letting it know that the end is near, that the edge is soon to come. The serpent shook in anticipation. It was so excited. Finally, finally I'll see what's out there. Finally, finally. Oh, finally. What if there is nothing out there? What if all of this is for nothing? And it shook again, trying to move backwards, but it was too late. The force and the thirst of seeing what's out there was so much stronger than the serpent that not even a thought was enough to stop it. It was propelling forward, moving like rocket with speed of light. The serpent felt the edge with its belly. It scratched it and cut it, and the sharp pain came in. It screamed and yelled. It couldn't see anything, for it went blind. And the dreadful sense of dread and relief at the same time came to the serpent. The blood shot into its eyes and everything went red, exploding in fiery colors. The serpent roared, and despite excruciating pain, it kept crawling up, feeling how the edge was further ripping its belly apart and taking its skin off. It started to move its neck and its shoulders, and the cutting pain pierced its body, making it tremble. It felt like it was being torn apart. And in pain and fear, the serpent lost consciousness. It gave in to the process of being on the edge and decided that perhaps this is it. It was too much to bear as a serpent, and so it dropped into familiar darkness, but this time not in reality, but just in memory. After some time, the pain has settled, and Serpent opened its eyes. He couldn't believe it. Nothing was black. Orange, peachy, pink, pastel colors lit up all the space around it. It looked like an explosion. Everything around was blooming in the most magnificent of colors. It broke in mosaics and shapes of kaleidoscopic nature. It looked like streams. It looked like what the waters felt. It beamed the light and the vibration of what the serpent knew of the caves that it grew up in. Iridescent colors pierced all the area around. And that reminded Serpent of the crystals that scratched his back for so many years. Everything was the same, and yet everything was so different, so new. And so excited the serpent got that suddenly his whole body shot up forward in the gust of wind and joy and bliss. His wings opened up to the side, and with a force of light and beauty, he pushed himself up. She pushed herself up. The serpent was no longer standing, and yet it was not falling. Bewildered, it started looking around and checking its body, for now it could see it too. Magnificent scaly wings were now present on both of the sides, with veins and claws coming off it, with such exquisite spread of them and texture. Like finest lace, they were connected, so delicate and yet with such primal force. Red, burning rubies they wore, burgundy, orange, yellow, fiery. It no longer was the serpent that could only go forward and back. It now was a dragon that could also fly up.